Right now, we do want to talk about tariffs because it's such a big topic involving the auto industry. Concerns about prices being driven even higher. That's as people are already paying last month an average of $50,000 for a new car, according to Kelley Blue Book, the highest price ever on record. So what does all of this mean when it comes to tariffs, and where do things stand right now? That's where we bring in former auto supply chain executive and host of the Automotive Leaders Podcast, Jan Griffiths. Jan, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
So I want to start with those rare earth minerals and the deal involving Australia. Kind of a complicated issue, but just break down what's going on.
Well, first of all, I have to say, Aaron, I like this deal a lot because it didn't come about with a threat. Because a lot of the deals that we've seen so far have come from a position of, if you don't do this, I'm going to threaten you with X% tariffs. This is a deal where both parties came together, the US and Australia, and said, look, what are we going to do together to reduce our reliance on China? We know that China controls the rare earth mineral production, and there are two parts to this production. There's the mining, and then there's the processing. Now, Australia already has rare earth mineral mines, but most of their processing is done in China. So we have got to develop another source for rare earth mineral processing, and that's what this deal does. Both parties have agreed to invest significant amounts of money to make that happen, but it's going to take time. They're talking about this deal taking up to 3 years before it really comes to fruition and we really start to see the benefit.
And so just for people who might not know, explain what rare earth minerals are and why they're so important.
Yeah, there are 17 rare earth mineral elements, and they are used in a variety of different products, primarily small magnets that we use in electronics. They're used in semiconductors. They're also used, so they're used in consumer electronics. They're used a lot in the auto industry, and they're used in the defense and aerospace business. So there's a lot of products that really, when you break down, you go down that supply chain. We all know the term supply chain now. When you follow that supply chain all the way down, you may see a small amount of a rare earth mineral. So we really need to understand where these rare earth minerals are coming from, and we need to develop a supply, because right now China has a stranglehold on the supply of this type of product, and we're going into a negotiation with China. We can't allow them to have this much leverage on us. So the deal with Australia has given us more leverage, so I see it as certainly a positive.
And you think back to just a couple of years ago how those semiconductors, the shortage caused by COVID-19, caused such a massive issue with so many different things, but especially in the auto industry. So this is really key for them.
Absolutely. All eyes are on this agreement. And to give us an idea of the timing, we've got the deal that happened today with Australia. Now, this gives us leverage. The negotiations with China will take place between President Xi and President Trump on October the 31st and November 1st in South Korea. That's the big negotiation. Then right after that, the 90-day pause. Do you remember we had 2 90-day pause time periods with China? The second one now runs out on November 10th. So timing is critical. So you got this meeting coming up October 31st, November 1st, the agreement, the 90-day pause ending November 10th, and then right in the middle of that is the Supreme Court on November 5th hearing arguments as to whether or not President Trump's tariffs are legal. So can you imagine all of this is building up this timeline? So the first 2 weeks in November, Aaron, are really important because nobody wants, any industry, any consumer wants to see 155% tariffs on China products.
Because we get so much from there, no matter what the industry is, there's no way that tariff isn't passed along to the consumer.
Exactly.
And just the Supreme Court cases, we've talked about this before, Jan, but that's really going to be key as well, because they're basically weighing, hey, does President Trump have the power to impose these sweeping tariffs? Does the emergency powers apply there?
Exactly. And the Supreme Court is hearing arguments about that part of tariffs. It's the IEEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. There are other tariffs that we call sectoral tariffs that fall under different categories. They have gone through the process. They've been reviewed by Congress. They're okay. But there's a huge percentage of these tariffs that fall under this IEEPA, and those are the tariffs that are in question.
And a lot to keep track of here. And as far as the auto industry goes, Jan, you talked about on the Pulse tonight that electric vehicle tax credit that was in place from the Biden administration, that's coming to an end soon. So that could cause EV sales to spike if people are in fact interested in one of those cars.
Yeah, that ended at the end of September. The $7,500 tax credit to buy an EV. It ended. So we're expecting to see increased sales in September, because if you were thinking about buying an EV, that was the time to buy it. So we're expecting EV sales to drop. Now, Tesla numbers are out later this week, so that should be really interesting to see what they're reporting.
Absolutely, and just because we saw the EVs, even with that tax credit, weren't exactly popular, that people just weren't getting into them. I'll be interested to see when those numbers come out. But again, these tariffs on automotive parts and imported cars in general are coming at a time that prices are already high. And I feel like the concern for a lot of people is just going to be, hey, these prices are going to go even higher and I might be priced out of the market.
Yes, and that's a very real concern. And here's why. Because the automakers are doing everything they can to absorb as much of this tariff burden. They're doing everything possible not to pass it on to the consumer. But they cannot continue to do that. It just will not sustain over the long term. And I think we'll see some of these changes coming through, certainly before the end of the year and for sure in 2026.
Absolutely. And we talk about this all the time, Jan, but it's so important that it bears repeating that even though the goal of these tariffs is to bring manufacturing back to the U.S., right now there is no truly American-made car.
There is no truly American-made car, and all of us applaud the mission to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. Of course we do, but we have to understand what the plan is to make that happen. And when we're tariffing everything that goes into that manufacturing, whether it's components coming from other countries, whether it's equipment coming from other countries, then that makes it extremely difficult to make that mission a reality.
And so as far as where tariffs stand right now, Jan, where are we at and where are we headed?
Well, this China deal is the biggest deal. That's the biggest issue that's on the table right now. We've got to get through that. We've got to get through the Supreme Court decision. And then we really need to calm everything down. As we've said before, businesses are concerned about the level of uncertainty. Look, in the automotive industry, we're a tough bunch. We can deal with anything. We really can. But what we cannot deal with is not knowing every single day, waking up every single day, not knowing what tariff is going to be applied to what product and for how long. That has got to calm down. Let's get this done. Let's get all these deals done so that we can move on with life and get our industry back on track.
And because we always talk about businesses thrive on certainty, and this is about as uncertain as you can get for a lot of these businesses.
Yes, a lot of businesses, certainly in the auto industry, are frozen, reluctant to make investment decisions, reluctant to make hiring decisions, cutting back on spending. All of these have an impact not only on the auto industry itself, but all the industries and businesses supporting the auto industry.
And Jan, before we let you go, I do want to give you the chance to plug your podcast. Tell me a little bit about the Automotive Leaders Podcast and where people can find it.
Thank you. In the Automotive Leaders Podcast, I interview some of the finest leadership minds in the auto industry, CEOs, authors, anybody that understands clearly what it takes to succeed in the auto industry, and it's available on all podcast platforms.
Jan Griffiths, you always do such an amazing job at helping make us smarter about just the most complicated issues involving tariffs. We really appreciate you taking the time tonight.
Thank you.